ahead. Excuse me, let's go ahead and start. Okay, there's only 5 of you. Put your name on that, please, and pass it around. It's ridiculous. We're picking up on 1281. Here, just pass this one. Never mind. Picking up on 1281, Act 3, Scene 1. Hamlet's talking with Ophelia, and we had just gone over the comments about being fair and beautiful and fair and honesty and such. And Ophelia responds to Hamlet's statement. If you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty. Ophelia, could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty? Okay? And your gloss points out a couple things about honesty, beauty, chastity, etc., which I'm not going to go over again. Commerce there, line 109, having to do with your gloss says intercourse. It doesn't mean sexual intercourse. It means speaking, involvement with. So she's saying, could beauty have better communication, let's say, than with honesty? That is, if you're beautiful, shouldn't one also be honest? And if one is honest, shouldn't that be an indication of beauty? Did you? Okay. When you're done, pass it in the back. Hamlet says, aye, truly, you're right, Ophelia, you understand, okay? And then he says, for the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty. Remember, beauty is being beautiful and fair and such, will transform honesty, and honesty, to go back to what your gloss says, meaning chastity, as well as truthfulness, okay? But primarily chastity in this context. Beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is, chasteness, to a bawd, a pimp, procurer of flesh. Okay? He doesn't mean like a third person. He means if a woman is beautiful, that beauty will attract or will cause her to sell her flesh. Sell, figurative. Give it away. The Old English meaning, by the way, for that word from which we get modern sell, comes from Old English sell on. It means to give. It doesn't mean to exchange for money. Okay? So, he goes on. The power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty, okay, can translate beauty into his likeness. The power of honesty, chastity, can transform, he says, let me back up. Power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. In other words, force of honesty, the force of chastity, in the word for the force there, it also means virtue, the virtue of chastity, okay, rather than the virtue of chastity can translate beauty into his likeness. What's Hamlet's point? Beauty is a danger. Beauty is a temptation. And Hamlet's saying chastity can't transform honesty / chastity can't transform beauty into what it is. Yes?
So is this his reason for not liking her? Or is he just like telling her about herself?
No to the first one, possibly yes to the second one. I'll give something away, since we're supposed to be in Act 4. Let me ask a question. Does Hamlet love Ophelia?
I think so.
He does. He is madly, head over heels, in love with Ophelia. And the proof of that is in Act 5. Okay? So why is he talking like this? Before we consider that question, let's get on to his next little speech. So, he finishes with, I did love you once. Notice, did once. Why does he throw in the once? Why doesn't he just say, I did love you? The once is emphatic. It emphasizes the pastness. I don't anymore. Okay? Big, big, big question. Is Hamlet being honest? Or is this all part of, the fair Ophelia? Remember, I suggested, I could be wrong, that when Hamlet walks out onto the stage, he sees Ophelia. Then he delivers the so-called soliloquy. Okay? I think everything Hamlet is doing here, it's all an act. It's all for the benefit of Ophelia and what she will report to her father. I think Hamlet knows she's being used, in other words. All right? So, she says, indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. You should not have believed me. For virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock. You got a gloss there for inoculate, to graft. It's a metaphorical meaning. Cannot inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not. What does he mean, inoculate our old stock? Well, we know what an inoculation is, right? It's when you are given a disease to help you from getting a worse form of that disease. Kind of like a modern vaccination, but the modern vaccination, the disease, don't think COVID, because that's not a real vaccine. Think like the polio vaccine or the MMR vaccine. Those stop you from getting that, okay? CDC director just got COVID again. She's had it like 3 times. She's been vaccinated 4 times. Pfizer just had to admit, European Parliament, their vaccine at least does not stop transmission. They knew that from the beginning, okay? So an inoculation, when these used to be done, because they're not done anymore, an inoculation was when you were given a live form of a virus. And it caused you to have the disease, but that builds up antibodies and such. He's not talking about a virus. He's talking about a term from horticulture. Take a tree. I've got a tree in my front yard. It's called a fruit cocktail tree. Damn thing's never produced any fruit, any edible fruit yet. Okay? It's got a trunk, and on that trunk are several stems coming off. One of the stems is an apricot tree branch. One of them is plum, and the other one is peach. Okay? Each one of those stems has been grafted onto I'm trying to remember what the original tree is. I think the tree is a peach. So the plum had been grafted onto that. So you have the trunk comes up like this, and it's got a branch going off here, a branch going off here, a branch going off here. So what you do is you take this branch and you do this. And you take this part off, it's a V, and you take another branch that's cut the exact opposite, and you put that on, and you take that, and those two will grow together. Okay? He's not talking about grafting one kind of tree onto another kind of tree, however. Look at his language. Virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock. This is the stock. Okay? What's the our old stock? Remember, this is Shakespeare's most religious play. It's what St. Paul refers to as the old Adam. Unredeemed humanity. All right? Virtue, the power of good, the power to do good, in all those, virtues that you can name, loyalty, honesty, love, friendship, it's the power to do all those things, all right? He's saying virtue cannot so decapitate, let's say, that old stock and cut a new stock on top of that, or put a new stock on top of that. He says, but we shall relish of it. Okay? But we shall relish of it, look at your footnote. That we do not still have about us a taste of the old stock, i.e., retain our sinfulness. You'll see every now and then, a bumper sticker. It says something like, how does it go? Says something like Christian equals, sinner but forgiven, or something like that. What's that imply? Yeah, I still screw up, but I'm forgiven for it, confession and all that kind of stuff. So, Hamlet says, we still have relish of, what's the it? The old stock. There's that something that says, kind of like the minister's black veil. Yeah, but this one sin, this one I'm keeping, this one's mine. The things we try to hide from God in that short story. I loved you not. So what did he say before? I did love you once. Now he says, I loved you not. Why? Is he saying, I am incapable of real love? Or is he saying, I lied to you. My old stock just wanted you. It's a good question. I was the more deceived. Why? If she was deceived, then what does that tell us about Ophelia's relationship to Hamlet? By the way, notice the question. Several people, the quiz was already turned in. Yeah. Several people on the Hamlet quiz, very last extra credit, what is Hamlet's, how did I put it? What is Hamlet's relation to the current king? What's the correct answer? Two of them.
Uncle, stepson.
Second one was right, first one was wrong.
Nephew, stepson.
Oh.
Nephew and stepson. But several people who put uncle, I rephrase it. So Hamlet is the current king's uncle? You got to look at how the question is phrased kind of thing. So, why was she deceived? Or, what does that tell us about her in her relationship to Hamlet? If she was deceived, then what? She believed him. If she believed him, then what? She loved Hamlet. And yet, what is she doing right now?
Deceiving him.
She's deceiving him. She's spying on him. She knows exactly where her father is and where the king is, right? Because if this is the doorway, they're standing right here behind the curtain. Because bear in mind, they placed themselves where they can hear everything we are told. Hamlet, get thee to a nunnery. Go to a convent. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Remember his conversation with Polonius? Almost just before this happened? What did he talk to Polonius about in relation to his daughter? Keep her out of the sun. Why? Because the sun breeds maggots in dead dogs and carcasses, what will it do to your daughter who is able to conceive? So, get thee to a nunnery, why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Why a breeder of sinners? The old stock. Everyone born in this world, according to traditional Christian theology, is a sinner. And we could get into real deep theology at this point to discuss or ask, is it because of what St. Augustine, 5th century, 4th century, can't remember, African bishop termed original sin. The idea of original sin comes from this one guy, St. Augustine of Hippo, okay? Because he read the Bible to understand or to interpret and say, everyone who has sex, let me rephrase that. Everyone who is born from an act of sex is tainted with sin. Sin occurs in the very act, which is why the medieval Catholic Church said, if you're married, have sex, but don't enjoy it. The enjoying of it was part of the sinful part. Totally wacko, most people would say, okay? It's also why the medieval Catholic Church, and you see this in Dante, said, any child that's born that is not baptized goes immediately to hell when that child dies. If the child dies at 6 days old and is not baptized, goes to hell. Not flaming, burning, sulfurous pits of hell, but just kind of a boring hell. Middle of summer kind of, August hell kind of a thing, all right? So, why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? We don't have time to go into this. I think it comes up later. We'll discuss it later. I am myself indifferent honest. That is, moderately virtuous. Think of that phrase for a moment. It's like being partly pregnant. Yeah, no, you either are or you aren't. You can't be moderately virtuous. Like, I'm going to be virtuous Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to be licentious, meaning I'm going to sleep around and do all kinds of drugs and whatever I want. But yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. That is, I could level charges against me. I am very proud, not a virtue. Revengeful, not a virtue. Ambitious, not a virtue. With more offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in. Imagination to give them shape. Remember Theseus's comment in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the imagination gives shape to airy nothing, okay? Or time to act them in. In other words, I've got so many ideas. There are enough years in my life for me to live out these ideas. And these are all not virtuous ideas. What should such fellows as I do? Crawling between earth and heaven. Well, what would such fellows like him do if women like Ophelia didn't get themselves to a nunnery? Make more of us. That's his point. We are errant knaves. Errant, missing the target, wandering, not having our true destination in mind. All of us, Hamlet says. We're all effed up. Believe none of us. Now that's an absolutist statement, right? It's like the relativist who says there are no absolutes. That's an absolute statement. If you're a real relativist, you cannot make that statement. Why? It's a contradiction. What's he just said? We are errant knaves all, believe none of us. Well, how could she believe him if he says, don't believe us? What might Hamlet be saying therefore?
Is he kind of like suspicious that she's a spy too? Because he already called his two friends out.
Oh.
And I think he's also saying, go hide. I think the believe none of us is kind of Hamlet's way of saying, what did I just tell you twice? I don't love you. Wink, wink. Go.
So he kind of knew from the start of this conversation that she was sent.
I think so.
Okay.
Remember, he was sent for. And I think because of what he saw in his interaction with his two friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, knowing they've been sent for, and that they're there to try to figure out what's wrong with him, and he told them, you know, I can't really tell you why, but nothing seems worthwhile in this world. There is no pleasure in it for me, etc. Okay? He knows he saw something, the ghost, right? But what does he tell us at the end of Act 2? He no longer necessarily believes. Who sent the ghost? Was the ghost from heaven or was the ghost from hell? Well, he needs to try to find that out. That's why he's going to do the play within the play. Go thy ways to a nunnery. And then he asked her, where's your father? Why does he bring her father up there? They've not talked about fathers and daughters or fathers and prospective sons-in-law. Okay? At home, my lord. What has she just done for the first time? She lied to him. Does Hamlet know she lied to him? We don't know. That is, Shakespeare doesn't make it clear in the text of the play that Hamlet knows. I think he does know that she's lying to them, which is why, you know, if I were directing it, I would have that heiress come down to the ground, but have either Polonius's and Claudius's toes shoot tips just barely showing, or there's a bulge at the ground where their feet are sticking out. And then he kind of walks in and goes, and he knows what's going on. So now listen to what he says. She told him her father was at home. Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. What is that? Why does he tell that to Ophelia? Let him not play the fool anywhere but in his own house.
So he doesn't like make an ass of himself in public.
Okay. What else can happen to a fool who sticks his nose where it doesn't belong? Yeah. Oh, help him, you sweet heavens. Now, Ophelia's not talking to Hamlet there. She doesn't turn around and say that to the curtain. Who's that directed to? You sweet heavens. Why? That's a prayer. Remember Hamlet's opening lines to her. Remember my sins in your orisons, in your prayers. Well, she's just prayed. And she's saying, help him, God. If thou dost marry, back to marrying and conceiving and such. If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. This is what you get to take to your husband. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow. Thou shalt not escape calumny. Chaste as ice, even if you never consummate the marriage. Words will still be said about you. Your reputation will still suffer. Get thee to a nunnery. Go, farewell. Or if thou wilt needs marry, marry a fool. Why? For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. Who's the you? Is he saying you, Ophelia? No, you women. What do women make of men according to wise men? Cuckolds. The cuckold was the man who had the figurative horns on his head. Why? Because his wife was cheating on him. It's a major theme throughout a lot of medieval literature. Okay? That one man cannot sexually satisfy a woman, his wife, so what does she do? She opens the door and puts in a turnstile, essentially, and just, lets the men come in. Chaucer actually has almost that image in one of his tales. There's not the turnstile, but we're told a path is worn to the door of the house because of the men that frequent her house so much, while her husband is totally, seemingly oblivious, but he knows what's going on. So, we know what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery, go, quickly. Why quickly? I think Hamlet's giving her a warning before the bad stuff happens. Oh, heavenly powers, restore him. What does that mean? If he needs to be restored, new stock, remade, regenerated, new Adam, redeemed, then what's wrong? The old stock, the old Adam, the fallen Hamlet, or Hamlet as Ophelia has just seen him, is now all there is. She's saying, God, make him the way he was before. Before what? Before this interview. Okay? I have heard of your paintings too. Paintings means the makeup that women apply. Well enough. God has given you one face, that is the face you're born with. And you, and this is another popular Renaissance trope, okay? And you make yourselves another. That is, you turn yourself into something you aren't at birth through makeup, all right? And he could have in mind, I don't know that he does, someone like Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth was not a drop-dead, gorgeous woman. But with makeup, what the Renaissance writers called art, she was able to transform herself, okay? He says, God has given you one face, and you make yourselves another. You jig, and you've got a gloss down there, move with jerky motion, probably allusion to the jig, or a song and dance kind of thing. You jig, you amble, that is the way you move, shaking of the hips, that kind of stuff. And you lisp. Personally, I don't find lisping attractive, but, apparently it's using that small, sweet, silly, singy-songy kind of voice. You nickname God's creatures and make your wantonness your ignorance. That is, you excuse your wantonness on the ground of your ignorance. What's meant by wantonness? Looseness, sleeping around. Lack of chastity. Okay? Go to, I'll know more on it. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. It hath made me mad. Mad meaning crazy, lunatic, out of reason, not angry. See, he doesn't say anything here in this entire speech with her in an angry tone. It almost, if anything, it should come across as without emotion. I say we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. Why all but one? Because there's someone who's married now who's not going to live. Why would Hamlet say this to Ophelia? This is, to me, another indication of Hamlet knows what's happening. I mean, there may not be the camera in the room for Hamlet, but I think he's totally aware. And I think it's to the extent, could be wrong, that he's not just aware that Ophelia is going to go tell Polonius this. I think Hamlet knows he's being watched. The rest shall keep as they are, to a nunnery. Go! Hamlet leaves. Ophelia's supposedly alone on the stage. Why? Because King and Polonius enter. Now, if we take what Polonius said before they left the stage, where should they be? Behind the arras. So all they should do is step out from behind the curtain. And Ophelia says, before they step out from behind the curtain, oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. The courtier soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. In other words, Hamlet's eye is the model, the epitome of the eye of a courtier, a soldier, and a scholar. His tongue is the model, the epitome of the courtier's, soldier's, scholar's tongue. His sword. So, he sees the way every real courtier, soldier, scholar should see the world. He speaks, meaning his intelligence is that of every courtier, soldier, scholar. And he has the martial capability of every one of these three. The expectancy and rose of the fair state, that is, all of Denmark, kind of rests on his shoulders. The glass of fashion and the mold of form. Glass? What's that refer to? Mirror. You look at Hamlet, and what are you looking at? You are looking at the very perfection of fashion. And that means fashion. How to dress properly. And the mold, okay, of form. Like think of a foundry where you pour metal into molds that gives us forms like the bracing the legs for these chairs. He is the model of humanity, she is suggesting. He's like in that sense, the first Adam. Okay? Yes?
Why is she complimenting him so highly if he was just like, I never loved you, your father's a fool, you should be a nun?
Go back to her first line. Oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. Hamlet is now, according to Ophelia, not Hamlet. The Hamlet she knows, /knew, correction. The Hamlet she knew. The Hamlet she believed. That's why she was deceived. The Hamlet she loved is no more. Okay? The observed of all observers. And that's where she tells us what Elsinore is like. What does everybody do? They spy on each other. They watch it. It's like Washington, D.C. What is so-and-so doing? What is so-and-so doing? What is the observed of all observers quite down? Okay? This kind of answers your question. She thought the world of Hamlet, and now Hamlet's you know what, crazy. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows. I mean, think of that image. Sucked the sweetness out of his sweet sounding music vows. I mean, she wasn't just deceived. She what? She took that bait and just swallowed it whole. She believed him entirely. And I now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangle. The noble and sovereign reason should sound like a beautiful symphony, and instead it's just clashing drums and cymbals. Out of time and harsh. What did Hamlet say at the end of Act 1, I believe it was? Oh, the time is out of joint. What a spite that I was born to make it right, he says. Out of time and harsh, that unmatched form in feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Hamlet, his mind, his soul, his reason, has left the building. Hamlet, the body kind of, is still there. Woe is me. Yes?
So she's essentially saying that he betrayed her, kind of?
No, not that he's betrayed her. She's kind of getting at Hamlet isn't Hamlet anymore. Hamlet's crazy. His reason is gone. That's the, we see that noble and most sovereign reason out of time, like music, out of time and harsh. It's discordant. It's disharmonious.
So when Hamlet, before he left, when he hinted at like that Claudius will die about the whole marriage thing, this is like before the play within a play,
Yes.
where his beliefs are solidified. So
Well, it's
I guess.
he still thinks Claudius is guilty.
Oh.
He doesn't have the proof.
Oh.
He's thinking the play within the play is going to give him the proof.
Oh.
Okay? So, blasted with ecstasy, oh woe is me. To have seen what I have seen, what does that refer to? What has she seen? It's past tense. She's seen Hamlet when he was the courtier, soldier, scholar's eye, tongue, sword. When he was the expectancy and rose of the fair state. When he was the glass of fashion and mold of form. In other words, she's seen Hamlet at his absolute best. When was that? When Hamlet was sending her letters. When Hamlet was coming to her room and talking to her and reciting his poetry to her. When Hamlet was, in other words, fawning all over her. Okay? To have seen what I have seen, see what I see. What does she see now? The un-Hamlet. The opposite of what Hamlet is. Okay? King comes in. Love? No. His affections do not that way tend. See, Claudius isn't a dummy. Claudius is a kind of a good reader of character. Nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little. That is, it lacked rhetorical sharpness. He didn't kind of marshal all of his arguments well. It was not like madness. There's something in his soul, o'er which his melancholy sits unbrood. The image is like of a hen sitting on eggs. It's what's in the eggs that's dangerous. Okay? His melancholy is like the hen. What's melancholy again? Depression. So the depression is sitting on something, and what is it going to do? It's going to hatch those eggs, whatever those eggs are. And I do doubt the hatch and the disclose will be some danger. That is, I expect whatever hatches out of that melancholy is going to be dangerous to me. Okay? Which for to prevent, I have a quick determination, thus set it down, he shall with speed to England. For the demand of our neglected tribute, happily the seas and countries different with variable objects, shall expel this something settled matter. So, I'm going to send Hamlet to England. Why? To collect the tribute that England owes to us. Okay? Maybe the sea air, the different environment will, bring Hamlet back to himself. Polonius, good idea. Yes?
So is the king like kind of suspicious that Hamlet knows what's going on? like that he killed his father? Cause I just think it's coincidental, like, oh, send him to England.
I don't know that he expects that or suspects that Hamlet knows that he killed his brother. He definitely suspects that Hamlet suspects something. Or he suspects this, whatever's wrong with Hamlet, it's not just because Ophelia turned away his letters. There is something more serious. Polonius. Good idea. I still think the origin and commencement, the source and beginning of his grief is from neglected love. Okay? Polonius still thinks it's because of what he told Ophelia to do. Okay? So, how now, Ophelia? You need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard it all. What's the it all? Just his interview with Ophelia? Or to be or not to be? Okay? Because bear in mind, how did the to be or not to be speech end? The undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thusly native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. See, I think they hear that, and that is partially what's going through Claudius's mind. Because that's not about love. That's Hamlet kind of saying, I had this great idea, I was going to carry it through, but my conscience has kind of toned me down. Okay? So, back to where we were. He goes on. My lord, do as you please, but if you hold it fit after the play, what? So, Ophelia has spied on him. We have spied on him. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern have spied on him. So he's turned his girlfriend against him. In one sense, he's kind of turned the king against him. He's turned two of his friends, oldest friends, against him. Now what's he going to do?
Something with his mom?
Let his queen and mother all alone entreat him to show his grief. Now he's pitting Hamlet's own mother against him. Or, another way of putting that, he's enjoining his mother to spy on him. Let her be round with him, and I'll be placed, again, for what? I'll be the panopticon. I'll watch. I'll listen. What did Hamlet tell Ophelia about her father? Let him play the fool in his own house. Again, my reading of the play is Hamlet says that because he knows Polonius is listening. And that serves as what? It's a warning. Don't get in my way. You're playing with danger here. Okay? So, Polonius says, if she find him not, that is, if she doesn't find out what the cause is of Hamlet's problems, then send him to England. Or confine him where your wisdom best shall think. That's a way of saying, put him in the dungeon. King, it shall be so. Why? Madness and great ones must not unwatched go. Madness in great ones. What does he mean by great ones?
Royalty?
Could be royalty. People with great abilities. Great powers. Here's an example. Real world example. What enabled Hitler to become Hitler? What enabled him to become Chancellor of Germany and then the Fuhrer?
Vote of the people.
Okay, how did he get their vote? What strength did Hitler have?
He's a very good political speaker.
Phew. The guy could give a speech like nobody else. Okay? What's the point? Hitler was crazy, right? And with his political and oratorical abilities, you would have to say that is a great ability. Which is why, personally here, you don't have to agree this, you don't have to have this belief yourself. You know, to me, when you have a politician who's just a smooth talker, I mean, could just make you want to buy something you absolutely hate, you know, Limburger cheese or something, and make you want to eat it. That's a danger. That's a real danger. Why? Because that is a power that person has over people. Madness and great ones. What has Ophelia just told us about Hamlet?
He's not the same.
Louder?
He's not the same.
He's not the same, but what was he before? Everybody did what to Hamlet before? Before he was the observed of all observers. Before his reason and everything was overthrown. Everybody looked up to him. Okay? He was the expectancy and rose of the state. That is, they looked for him to become the king, and he would be what? He would be majestic. Okay? That's great ones. You better keep an eye on those when they go crazy. Okay? So, scene 2. We're going to skip most of. We're going to skip some. Hamlet speaks to the players, and we don't have time for it. A lot of people, I'm included here, think this is Shakespeare, the playwright and actor, telling his co-actors, don't screw up my lines. That is, don't overplay my play. Because Hamlet directs the players how to do what? How to act. It's almost impossible not to see that this is Shakespeare going, you know, I'm tired with these people going out with all these hand movements and gesticulations. Just read the damn lines like I've given them to you. Or recite them, you know. So, Polonius comes in with the king and queen, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And he talks to Horatio and says, my soul hath chosen you. I don't usually emphasize this, but lines 52 and following. Since my dear soul was mistress of her choice and could of men distinguish her election, she hath sealed thee for herself. That is, my soul is chosen. This isn't homoeroticism or anything like that. Hamlet is saying, I have done what to you that Polonius, that involves the advice Polonius gives his son before Laertes goes back to France. The friends you have that you have tried, grapple them to your soul, Polonius says. Hamlet is saying, that's what I've done, Horatio, with you. Why? For thou hast been as one in suffering all that suffers nothing. That is, you have so identified with me. You have shared my suffering while you in your own person, in your own life, haven't had anything to suffer. What has Horatio proven himself to be? Empathetic, a real friend. You know, the other day when we were talking about this, I wrote up on the board here the phrase fair weather friend. Horatio isn't a fair weather friend. He's going to stick with Hamlet through thick and thin. Who are his fair weather friends? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Which is why they will, later on, be hoist with their own petard. Phrase that comes from Hamlet that we'll talk about. Okay? So, the king comes in. They talk about the play a little bit. They talk about Julius Caesar being killed in the Capitol and such. And Ophelia comes in. And the queen says, Hamlet, come sit next to me. Hamlet, line 95. No, good mother, here's metal more attractive. That is, like she is a magnet, drawing him, Hamlet, to her, Ophelia. He points to Ophelia. Polonius, told you. As an aside to the king, told you, it's my daughter. Hamlet says to Ophelia, he lies down at her feet. Lady, shall I lie in your lap? Shakespeare loves double entendre. If there's a sexual pun, Shakespeare's going to go for it every time. For a couple of reasons. One, to show that mentally he's witty. Okay? Two, when you think of the globe, and you have all these people down here in the yard, okay? Different class of people than you have sitting in the seats in the gallery, right? What does most of the humor, for example, on TV, on sitcoms, what does it often revolve around? Sex. Why? Hit the widest common denominator, okay? These people up in the gallery kind of look down their nose. Oh, that's so, gross. Oh, vulgar. They want the intellectual kind of humor that you have to think about a little bit. Well, in this scene, we're going to give both. Okay? So, lady, shall I lie in your lap? No, my lord. How does she take the word lie to mean? Shall I get horizontal in your lap? I mean my head upon your lap. Lying down, should I put my head in your lap? I, my lord, that is, okay. Or, I understood what you meant. It can mean either of those. Okay? Hamlet, do you think I meant country matters? I think nothing, my lord. Country matters. Back when I was working on the big long title, very warm edition of the Poetry of John Donne. We're going to read a couple of Donne poems a little bit later. And I would come across that word, country, in manuscripts. 17th century manuscripts. It was, I would say, probably 90% of the time, spelled country. Okay? Because Donne, like Shakespeare, loved to pun on the sound of the word. Okay? Do you think I meant country matters? He means oral sex. And she says, I think nothing, my lord. Or, as that word is also pronounced, noting, but how do you represent nothing?
Yeah.
Which is also a circle, which is also a hole. Okay? Again, if Shakespeare can pun on it with multiple kind of levels of meaning, he will. I think nothing, my lord. That's a fair thought to lie between maid's legs. What is, my lord? Noting, nothing, zero, hole. You are merry, my lord. In other words, Hamlet, you dirty boy. It's kind of what she's getting at. I, my lord. Oh, God. You're only jig maker. Look at your gloss down at the bottom. Composer of jig, song, and... Really? I have no idea what's the use even of that footnote. What should a man do but be merry? Why? For look you, how cheerfully my mother looks, and my father died within his 2 hours. Now, within his 2 hours, Hamlet is doing what? He's intentionally exaggerating. He's compressing time. Okay? Nay, 'tis twice 2 months, my lord. In Hamlet's first soliloquy, he said it was within a month. And now Ophelia tells us it's been 4 months. So long. It's been 4 months already? What's Hamlet using? What kind of language is that? Sarcasm. 4 months and she's already married? She waited that long. Nay, then let the devil wear black. Okay? So, we see the king and queen characters come in, and Hamlet tells them, it's the murder of Gonzago is the title of the play, also called The Mousetrap. And what do we see? We see the king go lie down in his garden. We see the other guy come in, pour liquid in his ear. The one king dies. And what does Claudius do? Jumps up. Polonius calls for the lights. The king goes off. And Hamlet says, where is it? Oh, we'll have to stop. We'll pick up on 1290 on Wednesday. I know that we're like 2 days behind now, but we'll catch up.